Hey, welcome back to the channel, guys. It's your boy Evan Trevino. Today, I wanted to talk to you about an issue that's pretty close to home for me in my home state of California. So, as you could probably imagine, here in California, we get taxed for just about everything. If you can think about it, it's probably been taxed a few times. And gas is no exception to that. No matter how you live your life, as long as you're living a life, there's a guarantee that gas influences how you live. Even if you're someone like me, I'm a disabled veteran, I legally don't drive. Gas influences my life and it influences your life. I'm pretty sure you're aware that they don't have chickens in the back of Walmart laying the eggs, so guess what? They're being shipped to the store. Just about everything runs on fuel, fossil fuels. Don't let it get twisted. Solar panels might be nice for your home, but on a macro level, they just don't do the same job or at the same efficiency or the same scale. So, let's talk about this, right? I wanted to talk about this gas tax. It's been kind of picking up a lot of attention here in California, but I'm gonna let the Assembly GOP explain this.
It's time to suspend the gas tax, and it's time to deliver relief.
AB 1745 is about giving Californians direct relief from one of the biggest costs they face every week. But the truth is, a lot of the pressure people feel comes from policies made right here in Sacramento.
We've seen record personal income tax. We have seen record corporate taxes. We have seen our budget increase over the last decade almost 100%. Why do they need to take more from us?
Democrats, Republicans, independents, everyone fills up their tank. Everyone feels the sting of high gas prices. Everyone deserves relief. My message for the governor is very simple. Listen to the people of California. The people of California need help. They need relief. All you have to do is listen. And if you do that, if we listen to Californians, we can put California back on the right track.
So you heard it there, folks. Basically, they want to introduce another gas tax after we had already just passed a gas tax in July, I believe. It increased our spending about like 60 cents. And that may not seem like a lot, but that adds up pretty quickly. Not to mention, they're also trying to include a mileage tax. You've probably seen some of these comments. I'm not sure how big it is on screen for you guys, but look at this. There's a clear frustration with the governor about this. And the more these absurd taxes come into play, the better things are looking for Republicans. It's a very interesting situation I did not foresee, and I'm pleasantly surprised about it. In California, we have a governor's race coming up, and the two front runners are Republicans. Crazy, right? Who would have thought? So, I wanted to go ahead and watch this quick segment about it where you have a couple of political analysts as well as the news talking about this fact. It's California. You have no shortage of Democrats, but two Republican candidates are leading the way. And it's mostly because of Democrats' incompetency and greed for power. But let's hear what they have to say.
Who will replace Gavin Newsom as California's governor? Voters will narrow down the packed field of candidates to two in June's primary. And there's a chance California could be deciding between two Republicans in November. It's why California Democratic Party Chairman Rusty Hicks wrote an open letter to the Democratic candidates asking them to, quote, honestly assess the viability of their candidacy and campaign. But most of the lower polling candidates ignored that letter and filed to run. We reached out to Rusty Hicks to join the show when he released this letter. His office said he was unavailable to come on the show. So now I'm joined by three political experts: Stephen Viglio, Democratic strategist, Republican strategist Tim Rosales, and elections expert and Political Data Inc.'s Paul Mitchell. Thank you all three for being here.
Thanks. Thank you.
Steve, let's start with you. With the majority of those lower polling candidates ignoring Rusty Hicks, does that mean he's a weak party chairman?
Well, look at history. If you look at candidates who would have listened to the party bosses and not run, we would have never had a President Obama, Clinton, or Carter. He has his role. I think it was a little inartful in the way he did it. He might have done it before the convention or done it behind closed doors because he was spurned by almost all of the candidates with his request, and it was a little bit of a backlash.
Tim?
So I want to talk about that for a little bit, right? This is a classic prisoner's dilemma. If you're not familiar with the prisoner's dilemma, you have two prisoners in separate rooms, both of them committed a crime together, and the police need a testimony in order to convict. So what they do is they tell one person, hey, your buddy already ratted on you. you should go ahead and tell us what really happened so we can get him instead of you. Meanwhile, they're doing the same thing with the other guy. And the only way both people will win is if both people don't talk, right? If both people cooperate together. However, that may still involve with some charges on them. They may get a lesser sentence because of the lack of evidence, or maybe a few of the charges don't stick, but one or two still do, and they're still doing some time. But they might be able to completely absolve themselves of any charges if they throw the other guy under the bus. And that's what you end up getting in a lot of those cases. And the reason why I bring that up to this is because you have a prisoner's dilemma amongst the Democratic Party where, yeah, you do have some of the most successful candidates are people who actively worked for their candidacy to get elected and to move up, despite the party actually not wanting that to happen. Self-interest, people. It's very simple, very human, and I think that's the problem that Democrats find themselves in right now. They are in a high stakes prisoner dilemma, and it is to the benefit of Republicans that they continue to do as they've done before, be self interested. Not everyone can rise to the top. Never, not everyone can be rising star. And honestly, I'm all here for it. I'm looking forward to it. I hope all these people stay in the race, so none of them end up in the actual runoff.
Jim, how are Republicans looking at this? Do they have the popcorn out, or what's going on?
Well, I think you've got two Republican candidates right now that are kind of sitting in catbird seats, looking at the rest of the field. And so they're kind of proceeding as normal. I think Republicans also look at the opportunity of a potential top two Republican, gubernatorial face-off in November. Is that super likely? Probably not super likely, but the possibility is there. And I think the other thing is that both Democrats and Republicans are looking at this open primary system, and those who supported it may be having some buyer's remorse and saying maybe we should go back to the old way of, Republican primary, Democratic primary, and dueling it out in November.
Yeah, Ian Calderon, one of the lower polling candidates who dropped out, did say exactly that. Maybe we need to reassess it.
Yeah.
I mean, Paul.
I just find it incredibly interesting how when you have these inefficiencies begin to hurt the party in power, you're going to start having these conversations of maybe it's not really working out. No, it's not working out for you. It's not working out for you right now. Now, he does bring up a good point that just because they're leading in the polls doesn't necessarily mean that they're both going to win the runoffs. Polls have been wrong before. Polls have been very wrong before. I think we all know that. However, I would say that there's a very real possibility. If you don't understand how the California election system works, like if you're not from here, the way it works is that rather than have primaries within the parties, there is a primary race. You're going to have all the candidates who are running for governor try to get the most amount of votes possible, and if you are the top two people, you go into a runoff race. You don't need to have 50%. You don't need to have 40%. You just need to have more than everyone else. Those top two people will continue on to the race. It doesn't matter if they're the same party. In fact, historically, it's kind of been the case. So we have a interesting situation, to say the least, where the very possibility of the runoff race being solely Republican is insane to me. Now, like you said, it's probably not going to happen. As we get closer and the pressure's really on, you're going to see a few of these people begin to either bow out of the race, or you're going to have the actual constituency of the party say, hey, we want this guy, or we want these two guys, or these three guys, which would do phenomenal to Democrats' efforts to retake the governor's race. We'll see what happens. The party is watching very closely to this, and they could pretend to be brave. They could pretend like this isn't a big issue, but if it goes unaddressed, it has the possibility of making the governor Republican, which I would love to see. But
You have this simulator that everyone's like refreshing every day now at this point. Just looking at the data and the numbers, I mean, what are the actual chances that a Republican, that Californians would have to choose between two Republicans as their governor?
Well, right now, using the more complex modeling and everything like that, it looks like about 25%. But really the way to think about it, kind of just for a layperson, is that there are 40% of the votes that usually go to Republicans and 60% of the votes that usually go to Democrats. We've seen several polls in which the Republicans are kind of tied a little bit. So if they tie and each of them gets 20%, will one of those Democrats make it into that first or second spot? Will either of them get over 20%? We have not seen one Democrat in any poll get over 20% yet. And so the challenge is we could have a situation where those two Democrats, or the two Republicans make the runoff. And a 25% chance means that it's unlikely, but probably too likely for a lot of Democrats to deal with.
But to maybe tamp down the concern that Democrats have, I mean, how many of these lower polling candidates need to get out? Or is there one particularly that needs to get out in order to help with the numbers?
Well, getting out is kind of the past, because filing deadline Friday, the candidates that are in, there's 8 top candidates on the Democratic side and 2 top candidates on the Republican side. The candidates could still say, I'm going to drop out. But it's kind of like Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave because your name is still going to be on the ballot.
That's an interesting point. Even if they see the writing on the wall, they know they're not going to win, and they actually do want the best for their party, and they decide to drop out to bolster the candidates that they think have a stronger chance, there's a good chance that you've already done the damage just by being on the ballot. I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. I would say, though, that there's only so much you could do as a party if you have constituency that feels very strongly about their guy. There's a good chance they'll still vote for them. People are very free-willed and self-interested in that way. But the other piece to this, too, is that I think money talks. I think opportunity talks. And if the party can sell opportunity and potential to make some cash along the way, I think there are a couple of different levers and mechanisms that the Democratic Party has to remove some of these candidates from the race. Maybe not remove, but entice them to leave. Hopefully that doesn't go through, though. Like I said, you know what side I sit on this. I very much want them to continue this race, keep splitting the vote, and when we get 2 Republicans coming out with 20, 21, or 21, 22% each and hit that runoff, can't wait, man. I really hope that's the case. You know what? Maybe I'll hop on Kalshi later and I'll make a bet on it.
And believe it or not, people will still vote for people who say they've dropped out. I did it myself. In 2020 primary, many of the Democratic candidates dropped out after the South Carolina primary, and on Tuesday, 3 days later, I voted for a candidate who had already dropped out. And there's a history of this. Leland Yee, who was running for Secretary of State, dropped out in 2014. He was under federal indictment and dropped out, still got 300,000 votes. So there still is a concern for Democrats that even if one of these Democrats drops out, they're still going to get votes and still pull away from Democrats' chances of making the runoff.
And with still a lot of candidates in the race, Governor Gavin Newsom this week actually did step up and say that he may get involved in the next couple of months if he has to. I mean, Steve, does that help or hurt this race?
Well, he's not incredibly popular among voters at large, but among Democrats he is. I think 70 or so % approval rating. So that will propel that particular candidate, I think, enough to lift them into the top position. But it also will be a burden for them in a bigger election running against another Democrat, because he will be seen as Newsom Part 2. And I don't think that's particularly good for any candidate.
Tim, what's your take? I mean, could a Newsom endorsement actually elevate potentially one of the Republicans in this race? In terms of the perception that Republicans might have against that candidate that is elevated by the governor.
Well, I think both of the Republican candidates right now haven't done a lot to distinguish themselves from each other, and that's where I think you see them kind of competing for the same market share essentially. On the Democratic side, Newsom putting his thumb on the scale for a Democrat certainly does elevate that Democrat. I think that goes without saying. In terms of whether or not the Democrats begin to kind of attack one of the Republicans to link them closer to Donald Trump and kind of put that Donald Trump, a stain, if you will, on that Republican candidate with other voters, does that elevate that Republican with Republicans? I think that certainly could happen, and I would expect to see that tactic. We've seen it before. I think it could definitely happen again.
That's one more thing too. I really hope that Trump stays out of the race, at least for now. I think right now, Sheriff Bianco and Steve Hilton have more than enough support in their own camps. They don't need Trump coming in and intervening into this race, at least not yet. Once we're in the runoff, do what you will. But please, for the moment, let them do their thing. They're doing it well. They both know the state of California very intimately, and they're doing great. The numbers reflect that. Speaking of the numbers, I wanted to go ahead and jump from this video and talk about a political article that came out yesterday that was talking about this as well, right? So 8 Democrats and no front runner. California governor's race is a mess, and they are they're very right about that. At least for them, it is. For me, this is a dream come true. So, coming out of Sacramento, California, top Democrats passing on their state's preeminent job, new candidates streaming in late, and a Republican upset threat so serious that the state Democratic Party pleaded with the fractured field to consolidate and was promptly told to go pound sand. Welcome to California's most muddled gubernatorial race in a generation. It's a kind of a good news, bad news thing, said former Senator Barbara Boxer, who backs the former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio. I'm not even going to say it. The good news is people want to serve and they're very motivated by the issues, and I think that can solve problems. The bad news is that there's too many. And it is basically just go on to say that there are too many Dems that think that they're him. They think they're the next Obama. They think they're the next Newsom. They think they're the next Clinton. And it's bad for their party. If we can skip a little forward, a part that caught my eye was here. So polls paint a top tier of Democrats that include Porter, Rep. Eric Swalwell, and Megadona's Tom Steyer. All three have plausible cases. Porter and Swalwell both built brands in Congress as she excoriated corporate leaders, and he emerged as a leading anti-Trump combatant. Steyer, a billionaire, has socked tens of millions of dollars into his bid and worked to build inroads with organized labor. If you think about the 3 nominal front-runners, Porter, Swalwell, both built their name recognition on being stars in Congress in different ways. A lot of MSNBC, a lot of viral moments on social media, said Adisu. What's with these fucking names? Can't y'all have normal names? Goodness gracious. Who ran Newsom's campaign in 2018? Steyer has done so much in the more traditional California way, which is he's brought it with spending and early spending in particular. None of them have unified the party or left-leaning interest groups like unions that hold outsized sway over Democratic politics, but have either scattered or delayed planned endorsements because they've been unable to settle on a candidate. While Newsom is preparing for a likely presidential run, there is no heir apparent. Yeah, they're completely just unorganized. And it's so funny, too, because a lot of the times Republicans will say Dems are always in lockstep, and then Dems will say the same thing about Republicans, and the grass is always greener on the other side, right? But they do have a real point about this. They have everything they need to run the California government, to run these elections, to where it really would be unbeatable for Californians, but they are falling victim to their own hubris. They have groups that want to support them, but don't know who to support. They have a governor doing his own thing, trying to get ready for a race, and he can't go ahead and step in because then it does complicate things in the larger race. Because there are a lot of people that don't want Newsom 2.0, including a lot of Democrats. But that's what I had for you. I just wanted to go ahead and bring awareness to this. because the more that Dems continue to push these insane taxes, insane policies, and continue to ignore common sense policies like Prop 36 that was overwhelmingly passed bipartisan in California. They still haven't funded it. People are still stealing from stores. It's very sad to see. And these taxes make it very hard for the average person to make a living. You have the Super Bowl case where the quarterback wins a bonus for the Super Bowl, but the bonus wasn't even enough to deal with the California taxes. He ended up owing money after winning the Super Bowl. It doesn't get crazier than California. Maybe New York could give us a run for their money, but or a run for our money with Mamdani, but there's no short of the craziness here in California. That's what I had to say. As you can see, there's some hope for Republicans. Let's hope that Democrats continue to trip over their own foot. I'm Evan. This is a video, and I'm out. Peace.